Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. I am Hodey Johns,
I'm Lou.
And I'm Sam.
and this is Enemy of My Enemy, all the way up to 12 episodes now. Thank you for being part of it and for tuning in. Today, we are going to talk about pronouns and specifically the conversation that was spurred on by Cori Bush's statement. This is, you may know it best as the birthing people statement. And just kind of how those two have I feel that one has kicked off the other. So the basic overview here. On May 6, 2021, Missouri Representative Cori Bush testified before Congress. Her testimony was actually about race relations as far as it pertains to medicine and how Black people are occasionally discriminated against medically. There are certain parts, if you listen to other parts of the testimony, there were even doctors who would specify, hey, we don't have anything that really covers, issues that are specific to Black persons when they receive pregnancy care. They tend to have higher blood pressures, have high hypertension, and we don't have anything that compensates for that. And so there is indeed some things that they say, hey, we've made all these specifications kind of tailored around medicine to white people, and, Black people just all have this problem of hypertension, things like that. And Cori Bush had a powerful testimony. She talked about how she said she was a problem. Her doctor ignored her concerns. And this happened with both of her children. Both her children almost died. She closed by saying she would do, quote, the absolute most to protect Black mothers, to protect Black babies, to protect Black birthing people, and to save lives. Since that statement, Republicans obviously immediately took off with, what do you mean by birthing persons? You had everybody from, all your usual suspects. Ted Cruz had something to say about it. Everybody in the Trump family had a laugh about it. Since then, the Congressional Budget Office has replaced the term mothers with birthing people on their reports. According to Snopes, about 3 House Democrats have used the term to replace mothers on their statements. But Snopes also says the idea of Democrats trying to push this further into a full-fledged replacement is false. Some, like Harvard Medicine, have actually gone the opposite direction after this term came to light. They used the term birthing persons. And then after the analysis and the conversation around it said this phrase, incidentally, quote, erases and dehumanizes women, unquote. And they cited those who would adopt and people who are infertile. And this debate, of course, reopened the conversation also about having pronouns at all, if we're going to start replacing words. If the word mother is going to be replaced by birthing persons, of course, this reignites the whole, I used to be he, him, now I'm she, her. Is that okay? And that's kind of where we're at right now. This is a very sensitive and hot topic. I would say I've got more conversation out of this. I posted it, just say, hey, I'm going to be talking about it in a few days. Let me know. I had people that wanted to talk to me personally, that called me on the phone, that were like, hey, I really want to make sure we talk about this and this. It's very important to me. And last week we talked about like hyperinflation and like bankrupting the country, but this one, even more emphasis than that right now. It's just what the public conversation is. Sam, I'm actually going to give you the first swing on this one, buddy. What would you say about birthing persons, pronouns? What are your general thoughts on this?
I think a lot of it just comes down to being part of the culture war, and people just sort of picking sides and sort of reacting in order to react. And a lot of it just comes, I think, from just media. If you're, it kind of reminds me of the amen and a woman. Like, why would you ever do that?
That was hilarious.
It was pretty funny, but it's like, he wasn't that big of an idiot. I don't think that he had no idea that that's a weird thing to do. I think he did it on purpose to, just drum up media attention. And, people are falling on either sides, and you're just kind of solidifying your base because they're the ones that are going to react the hardest, and it's going to be all over the news. And then they're going to be like thinking about it, and they're going to go vote for you. So I think a lot of it's just intentional. It's just trying to drum up stuff like that. The other thing I want to say is, like, with pronouns, birthing persons, obviously I think it's just a dumb term. Like you can think of something better than that. But pronouns in general, like the he, her, she, him, and the these are on all those, I guess. One thing I would say that is like my name or your name, like we get to pick what we're called. So I think there's precedent for that. Like you get to decide what you're called, and you can even legally change your name if you wanted to. Like, so I think you kind of have, you don't have a right to tell people what to call you, but you do have sort of a cultural obligation to call people what they want to be referred to as. So I think in some ways, like preferred pronouns, I think for the most part, culturally, it does seem acceptable to just call people by what they want to be called by. I will say, like, I understand like the rights perspective though, which is just that it's like it's plain to like victimhood. Like I'm such a victim, and trying to get, I mean, because the culture war basically is a war over positive rights. People over here want more rights than the people over here, because, and the left usually uses sort of that Marxist idea of, well, I'm a victim, therefore I need more positive rights, and then that'll even things out, and then I won't be such a victim anymore, and we'll all be equally happy and carefree. So I think a lot of that's where the reaction comes from the right, where they just kind of see it as like, oh, you're just playing a victim and you're just trying to get more attention. And there is something to that. I mean, there's a medical term called Munchausen, I guess. It's like where people pretend to be sick. Well, they don't pretend to be sick. They intentionally make themselves sick in order to get more attention from like doctors and nurses. And it's such a problem that they actually have to look out for that. So I think there is, to an extent, there is just this idea of victimhood, and it's being pushed a lot to, again, if you're the victim and then there's the aggressor, then it just kind of goes back to that Marxism where I need more positive rights in order for equality. Yeah, I guess that should be good for now.
All right. Appreciate your thoughts. Lou, why don't you hit us what you think about all this?
So going back to specifically to Cori Bush's statements, and I think this is where I get really frustrated with, the right's reaction to the term birthing persons, specifically in regards to her statements. Like 99.999% of everything she said had nothing to do with that. So we're pivoting the entire focus of what she was trying to say, which is women of color are like, there's huge disparities in our medical community about how they're cared for and all of these things. And that, like, the disparities in healthcare for Black women compared to white women in general is obscene. And there's a big problem there. And it's frustrating to me that of all of the testimony that she gave, what is it the right is focusing on? The fact that she used the term birthing persons. And in no way did she use it in a way to erase or replace mothers. In fact, she emphasized mother. I didn't have the time. I wanted to go back and count the number of times she used the word mother in that statement, compared to the one time she said birthing persons. And that seems to be all that anybody on the right heard at all. Because it's just this knee-jerk reaction to want to find something to be mad about. And lately it seems like it's picking on, the chosen identity of people. And when it comes to the term birthing persons, as we've talked about, like in legislation, right? We, as libertarians, and most people with any common sense, look at Congress and, just our entire system and how legislation is written, and how you'll have a 5,000-page bill written and have to be signed or not signed overnight. And using terms like birthing person when you're writing a bill regarding, labor and delivery, healthcare, or anything that has to do with that, using the term birthing persons is a more all encompassing, because you can have trans men who have children. They're not a mother, and that's okay. They're a father figure, a birthing person. So when you're writing a legislation, like a legislative piece, using a singular term that is all encompassing, there's nothing wrong with that. That includes mothers, biological women, cis women, trans men, whatever. However you choose to identify, if you are a birthing person, you're a birthing person. That doesn't erase women, mothers, and it also doesn't erase, it doesn't, I think one of the things that people really got up in arms about was the fertility things. But if, like, the issue of fertility, like that it's offensive and dismissive of women with fertility issues, when the entire point of her testimony was fertility issues and, preterm health, labor, all of those things. Like, that was the entire point. Nowhere in any of the context of anything that she said was she dismissive of or erasing or replacing anything. Like, across the board, anybody who gives birth or wants to give birth or has fertility issues and is trying to conceive, it's one single encompassing term that cuts down on the verbiage we have to put in legislation. So if we're going to complain about legislation that's written, this thick that they have to sign in an hour, then don't be mad when they choose to boil down a term and not, because how Congress is, that you're going to have 20 pages just explaining who they're talking about. Or we can use a simple term. Like, it's not erasing anything. It's not replacing anything. And I get doubly mad because I feel like all this rage at, her making this statement just kind of proves the point that there are so many on the right who are erasing or talking over and ignoring the plight of women of color, particularly in this instance in the medical field. Let's see. Black women are 25% more likely to have fibroids, or 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth in America. Like, that's unexcusable. The number of Black women represented in clinical studies they're so underrepresented. It's not even funny. Like 4% or some ungodly number in studies where they have to consent. Now, in studies where they don't have to consent, they're disproportionately, like, overly represented. Like, that's a big problem. So that issue in and of itself is very frustrating to me, because the entire point of what she wanted to say is being overshadowed by this bullshit rage, I think. To pivot more to the point of pronouns, like, I gotta say, I'm very, very proud to hear Sam's take on that. Like, we can choose our name. We can choose our pronoun. Like, do you have to call me that? No, I guess you don't, but you're kind of a dick if you don't. Like, it doesn't hurt anybody. Whatever they want to, whatever you want to be called. How does that, it doesn't make my car go faster, so whatever. Like, it's not hurting anybody. So, yeah. I think we should be affirming people of, what they choose to be. You don't have to get it to respect it.
True. But I mean, this is how we get Marxism. Anyway, I appreciate those thoughts there. I'm glad actually you both had points. I had a lot to say on this, and you both addressed kind of major points that I had. So I appreciate that. So that way I don't have to drone on. I'm sure the audience will love that more as well. I did want to start. I'm going to move this from right to left here because ultimately it's a social issue. And so, of course, me being the center libertarian, I'm going to end up more left than right on this particular one. Crazy lefties exist. They are real people. And I think the left does themselves a disservice by not one, acknowledging their existence, and two, dismissing or acknowledging their existence and then distancing themselves from these crazy lefties. I actually, while I was researching this subject, because I actually, and you both were in the chat, so you're even aware of this. I can't pretend like I knew this happened on May 6th. They brought up the birthing persons like 3 days ago, and we decided to talk about this. And I was like, is this an issue? I had to go back and research everything. So I've had to quickly get caught up to speed. And I've been looking at some of like these left-wing posts that are kind of defending the birthing mothers situation. Perhaps the most famous one was, I don't know if they pronounce it Naral or Naral, but it's the largest pro-choice organization in America. And they were like, this is about inclusivity. And anybody on there is like, hey, I'm infertile, or I had to adopt. Like, and I really take issue with this replacing mother. They're like, suck it. You've been like, all of history has been on your side. Your time is done, you cis loser. Like, I mean, and this is not just them, but like their fans. Like, this is like what happens when you get, let's not pretend like lefties don't have any kind of toxic culture. Like, you come on there, you have a counter opinion, and just like want to voice it and just be like, but what about me? And they're like, suck it, you idiot. Like, I don't want to hear from you, you white trash. Like, black people are actually medically superior to white people. And you're just like, oh, geez, like I have encountered some real like crazy stuff. And like, unfortunately, this is a mainstream, like it's social media. All right, I get it. But it's a mainstream thread. Like, this is the conversation. This is one of the more common conversations and experiences that you might have if you're, I'm not even saying a right-wing person, but if you just happen to be somebody who's infertile or adopt, and you want to be like, hey, I don't really like that idea, this is one of the most common experiences that you will have. I did see, like, just while I was searching for these things, and this kind of goes into the pronoun stuff too, people sewing penises that fit in diapers so that you can give your child a fake penis, so that if they feel like being trans later that the swing is not, it doesn't throw them off because they're used to having a fake penis in their diaper. And that's a thing. There's YouTube videos, which I think constitutes child abuse. I don't think it's abuse. I understand like calling your child, letting them choose their pronouns, calling them they, whatever it is. But there's times where I think it crosses the line into abusive, like where a little boy wants to play with a car and they like force them to play with a doll equally because they're like, we want you to make this choice later. You can't play with it now. And they're like crying. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like let your normal kid be normal. And like, you know, and I'm just saying, like, if you happen to have a trans baby, that's fine. Like, make that change. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can still let them decide for themselves without taking away the things that they like at that certain age. That being said, Lou addressed this already. This isn't really, well, Naral, I guess, is kind of mainstream. Most of these are very fringe groups. And the thing is, even with things like Naral, your common person that's not on the internet will see those kind of conversations and be like, that's idiotic. That's really wrong. That's terrible. Birthing persons, it turns out, is kind of offensive to a lot of lefties as well, because it boils down motherhood to just birthing, your birthing machine, whatever. And so there's actually kind of an equal amount of left-leaning people that are irritated about this as well. It's not two things about linguistic evolution, and Lou, you love linguistic evolution or linguistics in general. Something that I got brought up to me by Sarah Brady is she talked, and she's would probably qualify as a left libertarian. She was on the Wall Network for a while. We love her. Hi, Sarah. But she talked about how it needs to be easy to say, it needs to be kinetic, and it needs to be well thought out when you make changes like this. So when you make a change that isolates people, that says, yes, it's inclusive. So this new term is more inclusive to trans males who have given birth. It is exclusive now to people who are infertile and people who have adopted and foster parents, right? And so what you've done is you said, we want to fight over here, and we've burned 3 bridges over here, and that's kind of a net negative. And so it's not a well thought out term. Even like people that are like super leftists that are into this, like, oh, I really love progressive language bit, do not appear to like the term birthing person. They actually tend to just prefer the generic parent, which I think is probably even better than all this.
Yeah,
and so
I'll agree. It is clunky. Like, it's not. We're test driving it, right? Like, it's
right,
clunky.
yeah. We tried it out. We dipped the toe.
Word.
Right. I mean, and you know, unfortunately, you don't want to defend yourself by saying Ted Cruz likes it. But when you have like a friend, and we had somebody with the network or with this show who had affected deeply, who has had their family attacked because it's like, oh no, you're not a birthing person. You know, you try to cling on to your Mother's Day, and it affected his family. And it's like, well, that's not cool. Like, that's really like, that's messed up that this has been turned into an attack against somebody who is like, we feel that we're parents because we've adopted. Anyway, it's very similar to like GSM has replaced it LGBTQIA+. I mean, frankly, it's just because language is like, hey, we need to make a term that's more inclusive and less clunky. It's not that LGBTQIA+ is wrong. It's just too long. It's just hard. People aren't going to say it if you make it like that. If you say birthing persons and you're kind of like, that didn't taste right in my mouth.
It doesn't roll off the tongue.
Yeah, it doesn't roll off the tongue, and you feel gross after you say it. You're not going to say it. And so like, that's why we have things like GSM replacing these subjects, gender and sexual minorities replacing the longer things. That being said, moving on to kind of swinging back to the left here. Yeah, they didn't address Cori Bush's point at all. And in fact, she specifically, even in the quote, said, protect Black mothers, protect Black babies, protect Black birthing people, save lives. She actually is including everybody with her statement. She isn't saying, I'm here to protect Black birthing people, period, and that's it. You know, so she actually is opening that up. I guess she's specific to Black issues, but that's what the hearing was about. So anyway, like,
so you're saying the media didn't provide context and break it down for us.
What? Yeah.
Why would they do that?
So like, here's the thing, like, and then just going into general pronouns. For me, this comes down to just not being a jerk. There's a lot of individualism that comes with making a change, whether it's choosing your own religion and bucking the tradition of your family, or choosing your gender and pronouns and bucking the tradition of society, or choosing a different job than what the family was maybe. These are all individualistic things that, hey, libertarianism is kind of individualistic. So like, libertarians should naturally be encouraging of people to be like, hey, if you don't like what somebody else put on you, be yourself. And it's not enough for libertarians to say, we think it's legal for you to be yourself. We should encourage you. We should celebrate you being yourself. That's fantastic. Like, you know, and yes, that goes if you're like just a normal cis dude like me that's like, yeah, I like being a dude. You know, everything on all my screen names on my video game stuff are like the Hode Man. I enjoy being a dude. I celebrate it. I'm happy about it. If somebody wants to join me in dudehood, sweet. You know, if somebody wants to leave dudehood and join womanhood, that's too bad. You're missing out on a lot. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
No.
Right? Like that's so cool. Like that we live in a society now where you're no longer like, you better be like this. You better be straight. You better be gay. You better be, you know, this way. Like that we say like, no, you better be yourself. That's the one thing that we want out of you, is for you to be yourself. I think Ben Shapiro always makes himself look like such an ass on this. And here's specifically it. He's begun to like get his ass kicked by like YouTubers recently, because what'll happen is he
opened his mouth.
Well, that, I mean, that too.
Sorry, not a fan.
No, it's all right. Like the thing is he'll see somebody and to you or I or any common sense person, this is a woman. Like it just is. It looks it, and he will stop himself like 5 times during the interview calling her a her. And then be like, oh, I'm sorry, sir, mister. And you're just like, dude, when you have to correct yourself, like to go back to the bigoted thing that you say, like you've lost the argument. Because the point is that it is, as much as people don't want to hear it, I'm not talking about sex. I'm talking about gender. It is a social construct. It is something that we have social norms around. We have social ideals about. And if somebody fits into more with the ideals that come with being a male or a female, then that's what they should be, because ultimately we've crafted a society that talks to people in these terms. And that when they look at you, they address you in these terms. We say sir and madam. We say he and she. Now, unless you're going to try to propose some kind of neutral pronoun, which, as we talked about with linguistic evolution, fine, but it has to match actual evolution. And right now, we're not really there. And
We're not
you can.
they.
A they is fine. And there's some people like, one of my favorite ones is who left their sandwich here. You're not going to say who left his or her sandwich there, even though that's technically correct.
Right.
And even, I believe even the like AP tests have started like, for schooling is even started to be like, no, they is fine.
Yeah.
It used to be you had to say he, her, they're cool with they now. And I love that because it's something that even kids kind of say. And we've had to correct like, no, it's he, her. And then it's like, no, it's there. Like it's easier to say it that way. And if you don't know, it's they is a great one. But it is a little clunky. And right now we still have many, even outside of the pronouns, Mr., Mrs., Sir, Madam, lady, dude. I mean, we just have many of these. And that's about all I had to say. Go ahead, Sam.
All right. The other thing I was thinking about tonight, I forgot to mention this before, since I am supposed to be representing the right a little bit.
Okay, good.
I think we're corrupting him.
I mean, I'm an individual. I actually just think for myself usually.
He did say preferred pronouns instead of just pronouns, so he is still a little on the right. Yeah. Anyhow, go ahead, Sam.
Well, there is also the thing where, like, say someone walks up to you, you don't know them, you refer to them as what you find obvious.
Yes.
In that situation, I don't think it's something that you should always correct. I mean, for instance, my name's Samuel. People call me Sam all the time. People call me Sam so much that I just tell them, call me whatever you want. Because yeah, you can call me Sam. I don't care. It's like not the end of the world. Just call me whatever, because I'm not going to inconvenience you to call me Samuel unless we're like really good friends or something like that. And even then, half my friends still just call me Sam. It's no big deal. But I mean, so the responsibility, there's two sides to the responsibility. On one hand, you're responsible as a human being to refer to people in a way that is most respectful to them and that they prefer to be. But there's also, on the other hand, you should be sort of want to be, you shouldn't make other people bend over backwards to acknowledge you in a certain way, I guess, also. The other thing is, like, if someone's a woman, what does that mean? Does that mean like she is a cook? Is she a dishwasher? I mean, that would be sexist, right? So like if you refer to someone as, so like woman does not equal dishwasher, that's sexist. So then when I refer to someone as he, and he is wanting to, I don't know how to say this. He wants to be acknowledged as she because of whatever. I'm tripping over my words here, but it's like we're pretending that the word he means something really significant when I don't think it does. Like there's a lot of overlap between he and she and all of these different things, and it's just a minor distinction in a lot of ways.
I would have to disagree when it comes to someone who has gone through the struggle of, finding their identity and coming out to their family, going through the medical processes and dealing with, a lot of terrible interactions and people being very hurtful and harmful to them. And, whether it's a stranger on the street, your own parents, a doctor, an educator, like people who are trans have so I wouldn't like that distinction is huge for them because it's an achievement. I have looked fear in the face and I did this and I worked hard because this is who I am. And so I think it's a disservice and it's erasure to say that it's not a big deal, because for these people, that go through this. It really is. It is their life. It is everything to them to finally be able to be who they are. And I don't think that, there have been lots of times like my name's Lauren, but someone will call me Laura, and I don't correct them because it's like, it's not worth it. But if somebody misgendered me, or called me a completely wrong name, if they called me Sarah or Joe or whatever, like I'd be like, oh no, my name's Lauren or my name's Lou. I go by both. Like that doesn't have to be confrontational. Like I called somebody the other day the wrong name, and I was like, your name is, and she was like, oh no, it's this, and I was like, oh, my bad, and like we moved on, and it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't confrontational. It was, oh, sorry, didn't mean to mix that up, and I got it. Now that's your name. Like it doesn't have to be confrontational, and it doesn't have to be a big deal to correct someone. But I do believe, especially for people, trans people, it is a big deal to affirm what, how they prefer to be addressed. Because that's a fight. That's a big fight that they have gone through or are going through. And to be
but my question would be like, why fight it? Why do you have to be referred to by this certain thing? You said they should just, there's the individuality aspect of it, where why don't they just be who they are? Like if I'm a transgender man, why don't I just be a transgender man and accept the fact that, people are going to, misgender me or something like that? I'm trying to represent the right here.
Some dude checking you out at, the grocery store, and they say, thank you, sir, or thank you, ma'am, and they get it wrong. Like, I'm not going to waste my time, whatever. Like, I'm probably never going to see you again. Right. But if it's somebody,
I think that's typically what the situations that are the argument. If it's like your family member or something like that, it's typically, I don't think that's as much of an issue because they know you. They know what you would prefer to be called. And if you're not, I guess, yeah.
There
there is sort of abusive families that would just
right.
call you,
dead name you, and it's awful.
It's probably true, right?
Right. And the thing is both of these things exist. Sam, I think you bring up a good point, or Samuel, I think you bring up a good point that that this is how. It's a tough argument. There's this cartoon where one person says, I think there should be more genders. Another person says, I think there should be no genders. And then they kiss each other, right? And it's funny. Like, I think it's actually supposed to make fun of them, but I actually didn't know that at the time. And I was like, no, this is cool because like that, those people tend to be on the same side, right? Like you're just like, either it means everything or nothing. And it does make sense that it is kind of hard to quantify because in one sense, I don't really love, like, Samuel, you mentioned like a lot of the social norms about being a man or being a woman are kind of forceful and or toxic. Like I don't, and you don't want to be held responsible for a lot of those norms or, be like, I'm calling myself a man because I like monster trucks or something like that. Like,
I think it comes down to just shortcuts where it's like that's that guy over there. Well, then we automatically put them in sort of this box of, well, this is typically what a guy is. And that's helpful. Then if they're this height, or I'm just doing physical attributes right now, but if they're a teacher, then they're probably like this. And all those things are true. I do door-to-door sales, right? And sometimes it's like they fail a credit check and I have to ask myself, it's a soft credit check. So I have to ask myself, do I try to figure out and do another credit check or find out on the back end or all this stuff, or do I not? And I have to just look at them and be like, is it worth my time or not? Does this person look like they have good credit or not? So we're constantly doing those things, and and it's nothing wrong with it. It's an okay thing. So I think, it's okay to have the boxes, but it's also, you got to recognize that the box isn't everything. You can't just, keep them in the box. Like if someone, like, oh, this is a dude. He probably likes football. Well, no, he doesn't like football. He likes, he likes bird watching. Okay. Well, that's okay. My box, he does not have to stay exactly in my box. And as you get to know people, boxes tend to just disappear and you just recognize them as an individual.
Absolutely. Quick question though. When you look at me, what do you think my credit score is?
650.
Woo! Close. I don't know.
Okay.
That was
No,
way
I-
too
I-
fast with that answer.
that is a really interesting idea, though. I worked in like corporate sales training and
Mhm.
like curriculum development for training and stuff like that, and there really is sort of this. You have to be able to look at a person or a situation or whatever with very limited information and kind of guess, right? And some people have a knack for it and some people don't.
Well,
in
even like
sales.
if you get really good at sales, the pitch you give to the person will change every single door for every single
Absolutely.
person just based on like seconds. You like
Yeah.
you see them for a second and you're like, this is the pitch I need to say. I'm not
Yep.
that good yet, but I mean,
It's interesting, like the psychology behind sales and how it kind of relates to societal things like assumptions we make about people or groups of people,
Mhm.
based on their appearance, based on what kind of house they live in or where they live in town. You know, all these things, these assumptions that we make about people. It's fascinating stuff. But then when you, like you said, when you really get down into it and you get to know people, those boxes really do disappear. I mean, if any of you guys have ever seen my husband, he's like big, burly, beard, bald, tattooed guy, right? All piercings.
He likes
real
kittens.
scary looking. And he's like, he doesn't do the sports ball thing. He can't work on cars. Like he doesn't ride a motorcycle. Like he's a big teddy bear. He's a big nerd. He likes Star Wars and, you know, like
This has become personal.
right. But no, I really, you have to, like, I think that's a big part of the problem that we see, like the societal or culturally, we have this war about, you know, what other people are doing with their lives and their pants. Like, maybe get to know each other, like on a personal level, and appreciate the individual for the individual. And it doesn't matter. Like,
Yep. Yeah, and that goes kind of what I was leading into is that the box isn't that big of a deal. Like the first box, if you are, I mean, it's just how I feel, I guess. If you're misgendered, it's like that's one box out of how many, you know? Like that's not your complete identity any more than being a woman is identified with being a dishwasher. I mean, it's just, you know, like you can't just do that.
One of them birthing receptacles. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
You know, I think I don't know. I guess I would take issue with judging people right away because I think that there's nuance to it, and I understand. Like I've been in sales before too. Samuel, what you talk about, I actually did mortgage for like 3 years with a bank, and so I did. I was not with underwriting, but I understood like what underwriters were looking for, and you know things they needed to see, and you know had to work with people who do credit checks and all that jazz. And a lot of times, it's the problem that people would have is they get turned down without people trying. So. I'm going to tell a story. I'm going to tell it like a white person. So please just forgive me a lot. But I think there is a difference between like, okay, when we say that people want to like dress up nice, there's an idea that, and a lot of that in my world used to be like a lot of what white people consider nice, which is like tuxedo, suit and tie, you know, cummerbund if you're feeling extravagant, you know, top hat if we're getting super fancy. You know, these are very like white tropes. A black person who is part of that culture can dress nice and still have baggy pants. You look at some of the most wealthy of them that come out of that scenario, and you're talking about Gucci brands. You're talking about flat tip hats. You're talking about actual gold chains. Like, it's not that they don't dress up nice. It's that they dress up nice in a way that I don't commonly think of as dressing up nice. You know, like, so when we tell people or when we have these workplace standards that say you have to dress up nice here, a lot of times those standards tend to be very white centric, like what I am used to. You know, everybody at here wears like a nice suit and tie. And there's a few exceptions like, oh, I guess if you have a really nice burqa, I'll let you wear that, or yarmulke, or I'll let you wear that, or and it's like, okay, you're making like some like religious exceptions, but it's kind of like that doesn't look nice. Whereas I think that we as a society, at least my hope is that we evolve to a point where everybody dresses what's nice for them, and we all kind of develop an eye of what that means. And now to bring this back to like the box subject, I just think for me I get very uncomfortable with it because like we have somebody comes into a restaurant and says, and my servers make a judgment call based on a lot of times their age, their race, and their gender. Who's paying? Is the guy paying? Awesome. Is the girl paying? Oh, that sucks. Oh, is the guy Asian? I'm gonna get a big tip. Is the guy Mexican? I'm gonna get a bad tip. Is that, is it a teenager? I'm gonna get a bad tip. Is it a 40-year-old? I'm gonna get a great tip, and then 80 bad tip again. Like they just have these like views, right? Like there's these ideas, these preconceived notions. And the problem is, and Sam, and I don't think you meant it necessarily this way, but when somebody says there's no issue with kind of starting with that box, the problem is my servers would treat them, if they're in a bad box, like they're going to tip in the bad box.
Yeah.
And then what happens is it becomes a never-ending cycle, and you develop a parasitic relationship with that type of customer. Out in Colorado, we had a church that would get out, and we all knew what they looked like, and people hated them. So we gave them bad service. They tip bad. So we gave them bad service. So they tip bad. So they got bad service, cycle on and on and on. And it just kept getting worse and worse. And eventually it was be like, listen, you need to control what you control, give them great service, hope for better tips. Then it's on them to change their culture and tip better. And you hope that they will, but like we only can control what we control. Unfortunately, we kind of, if we assume that somebody needs to be in a certain box, we kind of destine ourselves for them to be treated a certain way and it's a cycle that won't break for them until they, at the very least, have like the maximum amount of assistance from us.
Yeah. I think that's fair. People in a lot of ways act the way, that's sales too. People act the way you treat them. Like if you're smiling and chipper and happy and passionate about what you're selling, yeah, they might be a little more too. So there's definitely that aspect to it. Yeah, as far as, but even like if they walk into your restaurant, you assume they want to sit down and eat. Like you have to make that assumption. Like you could even make that like a box, right? All I'm saying is like there's to say that, well, you can't assume anything. It's like, well, right. Good luck breathing and living, and
right.
So it just kind of comes down to if does your gender define you? And I don't think it should. That's kind of the long and short of what I was trying to say, I guess.
Why then do you think, Samuel, people get so passionate about misgendering people? I see a lot of like
intentionally doing
Marxism. Like I see a lot of it's cultural Marxism, or it's denial of genetics, or what do you think? Let's be honest here. We have this a lot more than we should in the libertarian movement. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
So why do you think people are so passionate about misgendering?
It's linguistic battles. Politics is downstream from culture. Culture is downstream from media. So it's like once the media starts talking in a certain way, that's the direction everything's going to go. And if you're a right winger and you're listening to them talk about, well, this is the new gender and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, oh, we're losing the culture war. So I think that's just where it comes down to. It's just silly authoritarian. The government has too much authority and they're wielding it too much. And so people are just playing tug of war over these stupid things because they have to win the linguistic battle in order to win over politics.
Yeah. Like I think you're right in that sense. And coming from, having a background in journalism and literature and stuff before I really dove into linguistics, and we've kind of touched on this before, like I was like, but they is a plural word. Like, that's weird. It wasn't like I didn't have a problem with it. It was just uncomfortable and like it didn't roll off the tongue, right? Because I was so like drilled into my head that they is a plural word, or, whatever, certain words mean and, how they evolved. Like it took me time. But So I do think that is, you're right, like how it's sort of a domino effect. And as the media sort of pivots in how it talks about certain things, like there's going to be the pushback, and then there's going to be the people who are right on board. And that's just is what it is. And it always has been. And I also wanted to talk about or touch back on, how we look at people and we have assumptions, right? Implicit bias, like it's a thing. Like, it is human nature to assume, to stereotype, to have some sort of implicit bias. It doesn't have to be like a bad thing. Like, you have it, you're never going to erase it. That's human nature. But if you're aware of it and you can address it, you can ask the questions, find the answers, and, as much as you assume something about a person, you should always kind of counter assume that you could very well be very wrong. Like, and that's okay. Like, it happens. I don't think anybody on the left expects that, white people are just going to wake up one day and be like, we're not racist anymore. Like, everybody has, like, implicit bias is something that is ingrained in our systems and our infrastructure and our institutions and our culture. All us on the left are trying to say is, just be aware that you have implicit biases, and that, and on a subconscious, unconscious level, like everybody does, and just acknowledging that we do. And when somebody points out a bias, instead of a knee-jerk reaction, go, okay, so the bias that I have, or the assumption that I made, or the stereotype that I put on someone, am I harming? Is it harmful? Am I wrong? Like, how, look, you can look at the situation and look at yourself and kind of say, okay, I made an assumption, and I think maybe this is an experience in my life that led me to have this kind of idea about a person or a group of people, and say, okay, well, maybe that's not right. So I should talk to somebody, become friends with somebody, get out of my own comfort zone and learn. Like, it's okay to be like, yeah, I have biases. Everybody does. And, you can't be, I'm not a racist. Well, no, but you may not be an overt racist, but I bet money every single one of us has some implicit bias on some level that we just can't, like, it's ingrained in us. And no, it's not okay to, like, hang on to that. It's okay to say, I naturally have this in me, and that's like it's not a good thing, but at least I'm addressing it. And I can look inward and say, okay, how can I do better? Like, how can I look at a person or a situation, a group of people, and when I think one thing, stop myself and go, you don't know that. You don't know if that's the case. Just because they're dressed this way or live on this side of town or whatever. Like, you don't know.
If you don't have an implicit bias, you are just intellectually an idiot. And I'm not saying that it's like you're in denial. Like, you would actually be an idiot, like, if you don't have a bias. And the reason being is, and I talked about this on the show before, is intelligence is how quickly your brain picks up on a pattern. So if two black people stiff you, the quicker your brain jumps to all black people tip bad, the smarter you are. That's a very smart person determination to make, because you said, I'm taking a few facts and I'm lining them up with what makes the most sense. Now, recognizing that and then saying, okay, maybe my perspective is limited to only these two instances that happened. And right. Maybe even if it is something, let's face it, that's a joke that they make on mainstream TV shows, that black people don't tip very well. This isn't like only my community or something like that. And there are people who are exceptions, but we have knowledge that this community is not tipping as much as another community right now. Okay. Do you want it to change? Then you have to act on that change. Two of my favorite books are The Bluest Eye and Raisin in the Sun. And these aren't books that pretend like the black community is doing well. Like that big surprise, after getting ripped away from your home country and taken away from all your traditions and forced to work for free and dehumanized and forced to use different bathrooms and different drinking fountains and not allowed to vote and discriminated against from owning land. Yeah, big surprise. Your community isn't going to be the healthiest in the world. And so then putting all the onus on them and saying that, you know, these books are written and saying like, we want to change, but we need people to treat us differently. We need people to treat us better, you know, like, and I know that this has kind of become about race, but to bring it back to pronouns, this is the exact same thing. I am used to calling people who look like this, he, him, or I'm used to calling this individual in my life, he, him. And now it's a she, her. Now this person is she, her. Okay. I could go with what my implicit bias is through no fault of my own, of course. It's not going to be instantaneous. I've called this person he, him for 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it may be, you know? And now, different name, it's she, her. Of course, any intellectual person, any person with a brain cell in their head that is used to compartmentalizing information is going to struggle with this change. And so you're going to say like, okay, I have to make this intentional. I have to say, you know what? I know it's there. And the only way to defeat it is to treat them, is to be aware of it myself and say, okay, I know what my brain is naturally telling me to do. I know what I would say if I let my brain do that, and I'm going to behave differently. And I think it does require some intention. Let's not be, I think it's daft to pretend like it's easy to make the change after one time, after one correction, like, oh, okay. Oh, you know,
especially if it's someone you knew prior to transition.
Right. Or you're just used to addressing all people that look a certain way as he, him, and all people that look a certain way as she, her. That's something that you literally, I mean, you've seen millions of people in your life. So when somebody is the outlier, your brain is going to be like, I don't care for that information, right? We talk about confirmation bias. It's like, this person doesn't confirm the millions of statistical points of data that I have. This person doesn't fit. So I'm going to do one of two things. I'm going to either recognize that and change, which requires work because I have to fit this one piece of information in with all these millions of synapses in my brain that are containing information otherwise, or I'm going to cut them out of my life and deny them their humanity. And like, I understand why people do it. It's not just like hate, but they can't find a way to overcome this part of their brain, you know? No. And it's easier, it's natural, but human nature isn't always great.
Right. Human nature in some cases was cannibalism. Like, so, you know, we grow up, you know, we get past these things. But like you were saying, it is like, even my daughter who, I mean, she's going into 4th grade, but in kindergarten, so not all that long ago for her, I remember seeing worksheets and it was like a boy and a girl, and it was very stereotypical drawings. And I understand like they're trying to simplify it for kids that age to some extent, but it was very, you know, binary, him, her, very distinct two things. And like, I don't know how much at 5, 6 years old she really picked up on, but like I tried to explain to her, I was like, sometimes people can be born one thing and then decide and feel like and inside just know that there's something else. And like she's looking at me like, oh, you know. But now that she's older, like I have several trans friends that are around quite often, and like it's totally normal for, like, it doesn't phase her. And I've worked really, really, really hard to like overcome like that implicit bias in her and be like, this is normal. Anybody can be whatever they want to be. It's okay. Like, and I'm fighting that from the public school system, which I thought was really weird. I don't know. Like, so it is something that is drilled into our heads, like these binary ideas or implicit bias that we have from a very young age. And I think part of it is, you know, oversimplification of things. Part of it is just denial of things. I mean, there's a lot that plays into it.
I did want to, before we moved on from this subject, we didn't address it, and so I do want it to be addressed. How much do you think thought policing is happening here? Do you think there's an attempt at, what do you think Is there anything piggybacking on the pronoun discussion or the birthing person discussion that you think could be used in a harmful way? Is there some type of, I guess, policing going on that's saying like you're not allowed to think of somebody that way anymore, either with legal or with social consequences? Question for both of you, by the way.
I mean, I was looking at very recently there was a teacher who had been, I don't know if he was put on administrative leave or what the situation was, but then he was reinstated. And it basically came down to he was refusing to refer to a student, I believe it was, by their preferred pronouns. And, you know, I kind of glanced over it, and I don't know all the details, so I may have this wrong. But it kind of sounded like when he was reinstated, it wasn't you're right, I'm sorry, and I should have been more considerate of this student. It was, yeah, I won, and I'm going to call him what I want. You know,
I know the details of the story you're talking about. The guy is like, my God commands that I gender people this way. He's one of those guys that makes Christians look bad. As a fellow Christian, I'm just like, oh gosh.
Yes, thank you. I was like, dude, that's like the amount of hate and just from people like that. And it's, you know, it's not hard to just shut your freaking mouth, man.
Or just like, that's not the time and place to make that fight. He's a public school teacher. I think the funny thing is that whole court case. And Samuel, I'm going to get back to you on the original subject because this is a bit of a side diversion. But the reason he won is because it was determined that because it's a public school, the public can't discriminate against freedom of speech, but private schools can. So he's allowed to be bigoted in a public school, but would not be permitted to in a private school that determined that they didn't want those things. So
isn't that hostile towards the student?
It is. Common sense says otherwise, but it's his freedom of speech. And because it's a public school, now I imagine this will be overturned, but it is apparent as of right now, he has to acknowledge the public schools have to acknowledge all freedom of speech, including hateful and bigoted speech towards other students. I know. And that's a ruling. That's a crazy subject. I'm glad you brought that up, Lou, because I saw that exact story.
I hope those students march through those halls and yell every nasty word. Oh God!
I just have to go to a different classroom.
So mad. Like I don't really want kids to do that, obviously. But
sorry, Samuel. You know what? I guess give you the last words on this subject here.
I mean, I guess it's an impossible situation because you're having kids forced into an institution, and then you're having a teacher who can't get fired. So I mean, there's really no. I mean, like if you're going to a Baptist school and they won't refer to you by your preferred gender, like, okay, well you went to a Baptist school. Like, I mean, what do you? Right. So I mean, in that case, you know, I would say, yeah, that guy has every right to call you whatever he wants. It's according to his religion. Like, I mean, I would not expect someone to violate their religion to call me what I prefer them to call me. Like that wouldn't make sense. So on that hand, but on the other hand, like if you're in a public school, you're forced to be there. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like
that dude sucks. That's all there's.
Right.
Yeah.
that whole thing. Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, like, even in a private school, like should be able to call people whatever you want.
And I think Hodey, you were mentioning before, like what do you think is coming down the pipeline with stuff like this? And I think we already have. I was looking into being a real estate agent a while back, and I was like reading, and like you cannot have a picture on your wall of just white people. Like if you have a picture on your wall of just white people, that's discrimination. You have to have some black people in there. If you show people an area where you think they would probably want to move, and it happens to be like where minorities are, and you're showing a minority, that's called leading, and that's also like illegal. And so, I mean, there's all sorts of ridiculous laws that can come out of this stuff. So,
real estate, especially, that's one of those. Yeah, I know I said I'd give you the last word, but just to confirm, yeah, we had to have the same approval rating among every demographic of group. Like when I was doing loans. And so that meant like I had to approve, if we approved 50% of white people, I had to approve 50% of black people, 50% of Hispanics, 50% of, just every category I had to
After
approve
2008, wasn't it?
And I will grant you, this was, I'm trying to remember, this is old. I mean, I did this like right out of high school. And so I was a teller at a bank and I ended up moving up to this. And so I'm probably looking at about 2008 actually ish, because I graduated in 2003. I probably would have become a banker at about 2008, 2009, 2010, somewhere around that is when I would have got my mortgage license. But yeah, it's, yeah, all bad. Anyhow, everybody, thank you for tuning into the first half. We're going to conclude with the next half. And we're going to give you a piece of our mind. So hang tight real quick and we'll be right back. And welcome back, everybody. Appreciate you hanging through the break there. I'm going to lead with a piece of my mind, as always, because I think the piece of my mind is always so fascinating. My own mind is just the best. I wanted to talk, I'll admit, I'm not going to talk about politics very much on this one. I guess it could be tangentially related, but I just really wanted to talk about the subject because I just find it so fascinating. Everybody's part of different communities, right? We got the Liberty community, which almost all of us are part of, everybody here is part of the Liberty community. We have people that are part of a book club, or you're part of the Boy Scouts, or you're part of, moms, dads. I mean, especially, I guess this does connect a little bit with the front part of our conversation there. But I am part of a community of smokers, but not the smokers like don't tell my Mormon bishop on me. Not the smokers where I puff up, but like the smokers where we smoke meat. And I love that community. It is just, if something goes wrong, you've got 10 people that are like, oh man, try this out. It's also positive and encouraging. And it's really cool to just be part of like a barbecue community that is just really non-toxic. And that if there is somebody that starts acting up, everybody's like, no, ban this guy. We don't need negativity just because you messed up your brisket, please. Get out of here. We don't need any of that. And I love that I am part of this community. I'm fascinated that it's impossible to duplicate with politics. It just seems like there's no way to get that toxicity out because it's a big community. When you're part of people who barbecue or on forums of people who barbecue, that's a lot of people. It's not like I've taken this small, there's 3 of us and it's a non-toxic group. Well, that's easy to do, right? Us 3 having this conversation. I have, enemy of my enemy hosts, and there's, 12 of us or something. And yes, none of us are toxic because I chose people that are toxic. It's that easy, right? We pick them out and we decide who we get along with, and that's what we disagree and have these discussions, and it's fantastic. I was just wondering, and I guess to pose it to you, I'm not sure how much else I had to say, but are there any other groups that you're part of that you're so glad you're part of that are non-toxic? What are your favorite parts of being in that group? Because for me, just being able to build with them, it lets me be very vulnerable with them. I can show them here's how I screwed up. I'll go real vulnerable right now. I haven't had a dickens of a time getting my turkey to turn out right. And I can do my brisket and pork are great, but for whatever reason, the inside's juicy. It's not that I dry it out. It's the outside it's so bitter. And I'm trying to figure out how to figure that out. And when I say that, as opposed to people being like, oh, because you're a dumbass, or because you don't grill as well as I do, you rookie idiot. I went in and be like, hey, I just started smoking meat a year and a half ago. So I'm new. I'm just now learning stuff. I'm branching out to turkey. And they're like, man, that's so awesome. Glad to have you here. I'm so stoked for that. And it's just so refreshing. I guess the only point I had with this is I think we should be more like that to people in the Liberty community. But I did want to turn it over to you guys and see if there's any non-toxic groups that you are part of as well.
It's kind of like gym culture. I mean, if you have some overweight person show up at the gym, they might be self-conscious and all of that, but literally everyone else in the gym is like, yeah, you're working out, you're changing your life. That's really awesome. So I think it's the same probably with grilling people or smoking. Is it smoking or grilling? Had to leave.
We can say barbecue. People.
Barbecuing. All right.
Yeah.
And sure. I also want to point out that walked to my friend's house because we were just getting together to smoke some cigars and drink a little bit, and he was wheeling his smoker out to the curb to just get rid of it. I was like, I'll take that, so I just wheeled it to my house.
Oh my gosh!
I know. So then
Did it work?
Yeah, it works. I mean, it's like it's not like an electric one with like the wood pellets or anything like that, but
I use a normal one too. No, that's awesome.
Nice. Yeah. So then I did some ribs, and then I didn't know what I was doing. So I like Googled like, when are smoked ribs done? And they're like, when it's like not pink anymore. So I was like trying not to get pink, and everyone was telling me like, no, it's going to be pink. I'm like, I kind of thought it looked done. Like, but anyway, that's my thought. So it was a little burnt on the outside, but it was still super juicy. So I guess
burnt ends are the best.
My first several racks of ribs, same thing, Samuel. Burned them on the outside. I feel you. And then, yeah, it took me a long time, but I've got ribs now. Ribs, pulled pork, and kind of brisket are in my wheelhouse. It's the other ones I'm trying to.
We'll have to talk later.
Yes.
I was gonna say like, oh, pulled pork, like we could have like a whole episode.
The rest of this
barbecue.
Conversation is now.
Right?
I don't know what was on a piece of your mind this week, guys.
I don't know. We're gonna fight over like which barbecue is better. Like, is it Carolina barbecue, Memphis, Texas? Like,
I can so get into that.
And this is where the barbecuing community turns toxic.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's a good point, right?
Yeah, my other friend got rid of his propane grill, and so I just took that too, and it was a pretty nice one. And like,
You're ready for summer.
I am. Well, I use it all the time because it's like you just it doesn't taste nearly as good as charcoal. Like, it just kind of almost tastes like they cooked it on the oven, but it's just throw meat on there, turn it on. Like, oh my gosh, it's so easy. Anyway, enough about. What do you got, Lou?
Lou, non-toxic groups.
Oh, no, I've found that, I'm part of a bunch of different communities, and like, politically and things like that. But I have found that, like, the tattoo community is really super cool. I mean, you're always going to have somebody, right? Not my kind of person, whatever. But like, as a community in general, because we're all kind of so used to being, the outcasts, right? Because we're all covered in tattoos and piercings and have funny colored hair and, wear funny clothes with, dress like it's Halloween in July. We all sort of share this, like, hey, like, people judge you when you walk down the street too, huh? What's up? I know, and but we're also artists. So we're very in touch with our feelings, we're very emotional people, we're very spiritual people, very, and we get very vulnerable with each other, like you were saying, like, and part of it too, as like from an artist's perspective, which I find really interesting because like art is in my blood. Like it's kind of my identity. Like I grew up doing it like as a musician, and now this, like, art is just kind of what I do. And everybody's very, you hear all the time about how artists are very like sensitive about their art, right? But there's something slightly different in the tattoo community where I can go to another artist and be like, hey, like, how did you do that? Like, teach me this. Or, hey, I found this really cool trick and I can do this. Like, and sharing things, and we're learning from each other. And like every single day at work, there's 4 artists, at our shop. Every day at work, we're all like looking at what each other's doing. And my work wife, Mandy, she's fantastic. She did a piece today, and it's not finished. I mean, the guy's going to have to come for like probably 3 or 4 sittings for several hours. It's this very realistic, the soldier's cross, the boots, the rifle, and the helmet. And it's going to have these really beautiful wings, kind of tattered wings, and a flag behind it. And, and he, of course, was telling his story about being over there and getting hit with an IED, and he lost people. Like, that's another thing. We meet some of the coolest people in our industry. So not just inside the industry, but the people who come to us to get tattoos. Like, we just meet some of the coolest people, and everybody's very open. You know, what is it? Bartenders, barbers, and tattoo artists. Like, we are basically therapists. But you know, on the artist side, we're all very open and helpful with each other. And then on the, like, even if you're just a consumer, a collector of tattoos, like, we're all very open with each other and very super supportive. Everybody's got a story to tell, and like, people leave and I know their whole life story, you know, and it's cool. That's such a cool community. Like, I love it.
One of the quickest ways to get like dismissed from the culinary community is to have like a secret ingredient. And I didn't understand why like there was such a like I thought that was like real good chefs have discovered like a secret ingredient that they don't share with anybody else. And that's what makes them them. But really the reason it's a culinary art isn't it's like being an artist and saying, "Oh, I don't want to tell people that I did these with the pencil." Like, or that I did these sketches with a pen. Like, oh no, like that. No, what makes it art is the way you do it. Like it's, and so it's not like, and so like these groups I think are kind of, and it sounds like the tattoo artist industry is aware as well, but it's not like withholding this information makes them a better artist by comparison. People like nobody does it a certain way. Like the way I do shading is a certain way, or, you know, when you do barbecue, like the way I have my grill work, the way I have my temperatures, the places I stack my meat, the way I choose to do things is still all my very own. I make my own barbecue sauce, which I guarantee every barbecue sauce you try is going to be a little bit different from everybody else's. And it's not that it's a secret ingredient. It's the way you put them together. You know, you'll notice,
the secret ingredient is love.
Secret ingredient is love. Gordon Ramsay's restaurants, like never once. I mean, they list the ingredients on the menu. They're so unafraid of. I mean, you see how it's done. It's done on TV every single day. He's not afraid that you're going to put him out of business because nobody does it like him. Like it's just, you know, people do it a certain way, and I mean, people have mixed feelings. I don't really care for Gordon Ramsay's anger hissy fits, but
his,
you know, like
things are amazing.
Yes.
He gets to be a little therapeutic when, you know, it's like when you see someone just doing everything wrong and haphazardly, and you see him come in and just lay it out. It's like, yeah, I wish I could do that in my job, you know?
Right? Like I've had jobs.
That's what I think that is. But anyway,
right? I've had jobs like that where like I'll be like, I could really go on a Gordon Ramsay right now. Like
listen here, you pasty faced, whatever. Like it just goes crazy. Yeah.
Sandwich.
Yeah. I'm an idiot sandwich. That's right. I don't know. I just think that it's something to strive for and to think about how inclusive these communities are. And we can't kick all the toxic people out, but we can encourage non-toxicity. And you can be that non-toxic place. Like when somebody does ask a rookie question or say something in a certain way that you just tell like, okay, you're new. Like, not everybody knows taxation is theft until you're a libertarian. You've heard it a lot. For a lot of people, it's not even the reason they joined to begin with.
Yeah.
And so like the first time somebody might just be like, well, you know, I mean, I want the roads to be maintained. And you can feel the tidal wave in the back. You're like, this person is going to get buried. Like this is their last day of being a libertarian. I already know because they just talked about the roads. Like it's over for them. But you can be that person who's like, okay, hang on, let me be my bulwark real quick. I get where you're coming from. I'm glad that you're talking about this because it's not something that we want to ignore. Like it's something that we want to address. And so I just think like when you see somebody making that move, just remember what it's like to be a rookie yourself. Almost none of us were born libertarians. I mean, it's just the way it is. Almost all of us came from some place. And even those who like might have had two libertarian parents, a lot of times find themselves becoming more libertarians or changing from right to left to center libertarian, or just, you know, develop different ways of seeing things. You know, for some people, taxation, it's less about the theft and more about the immorality, or more, you know, whatever it may be. Like we just change perspectives a little bit. And I just think it's good to be that non-toxic person. It takes a lot of effort, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it kind of just depends. Like I think we've talked about this before. Like if you're a lead, like the leader is kind of the one who sets the tone, and sometimes you just kind of have to step up and set the tone. Like I mean, I think in one of our Facebook group chats, people were arguing back and forth about the police or something like that, and then, one of our guys just chipped in and said, "You know what? Let's just talk about taxes." And I was like, I just joked with him. I was like, "What? You believe in taxes now?" And he's like, "Yeah, of course, for the roads." And we just took it in, a positive direction because it was just like going nowhere. And I think you can just like if even libertarians you can just build your own community. Like it's not about getting rid of people. I mean, sometimes that's inevitable, but a lot of times it's just you gotta just set the tone. But
good call, Lou. Give us a piece of your mind today.
I'm going to go a little bit insider baseball. Actually a lot of it insider baseball, but honestly, I hadn't picked a topic until just now. I was sitting here the whole time going, what am I going to say?
Oh crap, this segment.
But on kind of on this same topic, right? Of the infighting and that sort of stuff. Can we talk about New Hampshire?
Go for it.
This should be fun.
Oh my God.
New Hampshire is a state in the Northeast.
Okay. I'm going to try and keep this in broader terms. The idea that a state affiliate can boot a member in such a fashion after how many times have we exposed like, hey, this person has been arrested for child porn or molesting children. We need to, return his donations, get him off the rolls. Like we don't like, and it was always some bureaucrat like, well, I don't know who has the authority to blah, blah, blah. Two people get in a fight and all of a sudden the EC like just boom, you can't play with us anymore. I'm baffled. But I don't know. I'm baffled by this whole thing. And this like one of those things where I have not, nor will I ever leave the Liberty community, but the party is sort of where I've the political arm of the Liberty movement is broken.
I think it's totally fair to say it's not for me too. Like there's some people who can make it work. Lou, you and me, we've been on the same campaign together before.
Yeah,
it's fun. We believe in the candidates. We love spreading the message. But there comes a time where you just kind of say like, I'm better at the culture stuff. Like I am so much better at making libertarians in my community than I am on a campaign trail. Some people are just better on social media than they are in a campaign. For those who are great at campaigns, I mean, Spike Cohen, hearts, baby, like good for what you do. It's just, I suck at it. And I think it's fair to just be like, I suck and that's not for me. Right. As far as specifically the situation in New Hampshire, I think I've got almost everybody involved blocked on both sides. So I have no problem like mentioning names here. God. But the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire has a very controversial person for their social media. And so naturally they we can talk about the difference between saying, oh, at least they're talking about the subject versus at least they're talking about the subject, but they hate me now because of the way that I talked about the subject.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead, Sam.
You should tell a story like what it is we're talking about. I mean, I kind of know what we're talking about, but like just like from start to finish, what is it for the listeners?
Sure. So, and this is now I've had a lot of these people blocked before this whole thing went down. So, Samuel, you can even and Lou, you can add details as this goes. From what I understand, Jackie Perry is what I would call a reprehensible human being within the libertarian movement. And she is very good at, she's a known liar. She thrives on anger, hate, just the most vile comments you can think of. And she is kind of on the left side. On the right side, you have, what's his name? Jeremy
Kaufman.
Like running the Libertarian New Hampshire. And he is about the same as far as being vile, saying absolutely despicable things, making trade-offs, being like, hey, we'd be in a freer world if we could kill 1,000 trans people a year but have no taxes. Like, just, even if it's true, like, just one of the most vile things that you could say, which, by the way, not true. Murder, always bad. Taking money, less bad, but both awful. As soon as you get into the debate on like which one's better, you've kind of lost the fight as far as like murder or stealing. Like, stealing from a lot of people or murdering only a couple people. Like, come on, man. Like, I don't even want to debate that statement because it is just
atrocious.
Right. The truth of it is aside, it's just an atrocious thing to say. And so, no surprise, this right libertarian vile person gets into a fight with an ultra left libertarian vile person, and they don't get along, and they are both affiliated with the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. Jackie takes the steps to, now this is not, from what I understand, technically doxing, because this person's information was available. It was Googleable information. But she makes this person who she does not like information public, and of course, in a negative light, and encourages people to say bad things about this individual to their home, to their job, to their house, all that stuff. Okay. It's not technically doxing. You don't have to dox you can stop short of doxing somebody, but you can still do a really douchey thing. And that was a really douchey thing to do. And so it very much targeted this person. Of course, this person gets overloaded with anger or whatever. And what do they do in response? They disaffiliate, I excommunicate, whatever it may be, whatever libertarian function it is, Jackie Perry out of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. They say, no, we're not taking your dues anymore. Good day to you, ma'am. As Lou mentions, we've had pedophiles do this before, and we still took their donations and everything. So
it was bad.
It is one of those that it is an unprecedented step. I understand why it's so unprecedented, because it's hard to get two people of that caliber of awfulness in the same room together. You're like, this is going to explode. Like, this is going to explode.
I kind of feel like there's some context here, that's really important. Like, that was pretty vague, but there's some really important context here. The statement was put out from the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire's Facebook page. Legalize child labor. Something about they'll learn on the job or something.
They learn more on the job than they will in schools. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So in this attempt to be an edgelord, whatever, like, it kind of enraged a lot of people. They were like, dude, this is bad messaging. Like, what are you? No. Like, if you want to talk about youth autonomy and youth rights, we can do that. But like, legalize child labor, dude, no. Like, that's not it, right? So there were a lot of complaints about the messaging coming out of LPNH as an organization, right? And Jackie, and I'm going to say, like, I have a strange soft spot for Jackie. Like, I've blocked her and unblocked her and blocked her. Like, we've done this for like years to each other. It's like, I don't know all the time how much control she has over her reactions. I'm trying.
That's fair.
I don't want to make assumptions nor diagnoses, but sometimes I just kind of go, okay, well, she's having a moment, right? And I just kind of ignore it and go, it'll calm down soon. And it does. She's also really funny. Like, when she's not on a tirade about something and she makes jokes, like, I think she's really funny. And I enjoy humor. So I'll scroll past the stuff I don't want to read, and then I laugh when she posts a joke. So anyway, she made publicly available, the already publicly available contact information for Gilletta Jarvis, who, to my understanding, is the chair of the LPNH.
Yeah.
And has also run for public office on more than one occasion, if I'm not mistaken, like big, like governorship.
Sure.
So her contact information was, and always will be public because she's run for public office. She also has it posted herself on her social media, publicly available. Also on the LPNH website are other, several different ways to contact her because she is the chair of the state party. Whether you're a chair of a state party, president of the country, whatever, when you were a CEO of a company, if your company goes bankrupt, you're responsible. When your country is in shambles as the president, that's on you. Like, it may not be directly because you did something, but you ran for office because you said, you know what, I'm going to take responsibility for whatever. Like, if someone under me messes up, like, it's my job to do something about that. So addressing the chair of the party through already accessible information, public information, to address an issue about the messaging coming from the state party, if you're a member, you have every right to do that. Every right to do that. And as libertarians, like, one of our biggest things about a free market is voice, like having your voice heard. In high numbers, we boycott, we sign petitions, we march down the streets. Like, we want our voices heard in numbers when we are unhappy, and the person at the top has to take some action, right? And so instead, they got pissed and literally had like a secret meeting and kicked her out. And they're still trying to, like, I'll be really honest with you. I think there are probably 5 other things that Jackie's done in the past that I would have been like, a review might not be a bad idea. Like, this wasn't it.
It's possible they considered all of that as well. I don't know.
Well, Samuel, we've had the floor for a long time, and you should absolutely have a view here. And for those with some more context, the LP New Hampshire is I guess not friendly, but has members in the leadership position that are members of the Mises Caucus, which Samuel is also a part of, and we love our Samuel. So Samuel, go ahead and you'll probably have a different take on this than we will, but give us your thoughts on this.
First of all, I don't know either of those people, so I'm not going to have
lucky dog. You are so lucky.
Being a part of the Mises Caucus, I heard I heard kind of what Hodey was saying about the person who did the doxing or whatever you want to call it. But I haven't heard anything about the other person or anything like that. So I'm completely out of the know on that. I will say that if you look at Wikipedia, doxing is the act of publicly revealing previously private and personal information about an individual and an organization, usually through the internet. Methods employed to acquire such information include searching publicly available databases and social media websites, hacking, and social engineering. So, I mean, we could technically say that while they searched publicly available information, they were still doxing. I don't know how semantical you want to get into that. As far as like the child labor thing, I didn't really like the tweet either. You got to draw the distinction between child abuse and child labor. Like, I worked growing up as a kid on a farm. Like, that wasn't child abuse. It was child labor. And I think when they just kind of talk about child labor and don't make the distinction, everyone's just kind of jumping to all this child abuse. And you have to make that distinction, I guess.
I do have to say, like, having a background in communications and PR, particularly in politics and working with candidates, like, I do understand, like, the the method and the idea of using a message like that, for instance, that is really extreme and it gets people talking, right?
Right.
There are better ways to do it. We see Spike do this all the time, for example, communicating an idea. He'll say the outrageous thing, and then he'll follow up with well, not actually, but here's what some law actually says about, children. Like, just to get people talking about the subject of the existing child labor laws as they are. We don't talk about that. That's not part of cultural discussion. But unfortunately, that terrible communication just derailed that entire conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, like the Kentucky tweet about the stars and stuff? I actually really liked that tweet. I didn't think that was a bad tweet. That was like aggressive. It was
the Holocaust.
Maybe I shouldn't bring it up, but
go ahead. Let's dive in.
I'm totally okay with being bold and just saying something sort of, but it's just got to be on point. Like it's got to be. I don't know. I didn't think the child labor one was quite as on point because you're thinking, well, about child abuse, like, do you want your 4-year-old in a coal mine? That's what's jumping to mind. And
right.
Instead of just like the Star of David vaccine thing, what's jumping to your mind is this is a really bad thing, which is what you kind of want. I will read the, let's see, Carol Ann Harlow's. She said that the historical party position, a child is a human being and as such deserves to be treated justly. We oppose laws infringing on children's rights to work or learn, as such child labor laws and compulsory education laws. We also oppose the use of curfews based on age. I thought that was a much better way of putting it. Like,
yeah,
it's just,
absolutely.
It's putting it in a positive way. Like, we want this good thing. And yeah, it is kind of like talking curfews for kids. Rights. Like, that's stupid if your parents allow you to stay up at night, or maybe your parents work odd hours, or like, I mean, I thought she put it really well. And well, I mean, I don't know if she wrote it, but that was a previous party position. So,
well, and this is also the Libertarian Party in New Hampshire. And let me point to a better tweet that they had within like a day of I think like the day before this bad tweet came out, was they said they linked a story about a girl who was working in a floral shop. And she was like 14 years old, and they went after the floral shop, and they went after the girl, they went after the parents. And it's just like, this is what child labor laws look like. It's not preventing your kid from working on a line, which is what you want. It's punishing, fining, hurting people that like have found a line of work that they want to participate in. Like It's not. And I think that tweet was immensely successful. No, like, no ratioed, everything was great with that one. And
I thought you were going to talk about the brain tumor one.
No, I'm not sure with that one, but I'm not sure if I even want to get into that one. But like, there is a way for the messaging to be positive. Now, sticking, I guess, specifically to the story with like what happened with Jackie, it's an unprecedented thing. I understand that, like, we've even had, what's funny, some of these people who are cheering on her disaffiliation have also in the past been like, no, keep this guy around. I know he's a white supremacist, but let's take dues from everybody. No, I know that guy's a pedophile, but I'd rather us have his money than somebody else. And it's like, well, it's weird that you would go to bat for, like, as much as I dislike Jackie Perry, and I won't take back anything I said. I find her very vile, and I understand that you might find her funny, Lou. I get where you see that too, because I used to keep her around for like an occasional meme as well. Right. At some point it becomes like, how many lies am I going to listen to before I'm just like, you just hate everybody. It's so hateful I can't even get on anymore. So like I think for me, like,
ignoring it.
Right. But like, is she worse than a pedophile? Is she worse than like a white supremacist? Like,
absolutely not.
No, like, she's bad, but she's not that bad. And so I think there is like a consistency thing part where you're just like, do I hate her because like she represents the vile left, as opposed to like a pedophile or a white supremacist that might be a little bit sympathetic with me?
Is it like a thing though where she's also more elevated than some of these other people? So like, if you're in a position,
these other people made national news.
Richard Spencer.
Okay. Never mind.
Okay. I mean, now a lot of these, and I made a point of this recently, almost every white supremacist has been a part of the Libertarian Party for like 6 months before leaving, because they don't realize the cultural standard that we have in the Libertarian Party, which is very high, like very high. They see the Libertarian Party and they're like, oh, sweet, I can get rid of all these segregation laws. I can get rid of the Civil Rights Act and segregate restaurants again. And then they realize, oh, wait, these people value everybody as individuals and not as collectives. So my racism doesn't really fit in well here. So like, Cantwell, Molyneux, Spencer. I mean, they test the waters of libertarianism and then they're like, oh, that was really bad. I'm going back to what Spencer went to the Democrats and the rest went to the Republicans, whatever. Like they're all mainstream parties now. They're not our problem anymore, but like, that's the cultural thing. All right. That's a libertarian. That's some insider baseball. It's gossip. It's fun to talk about, but it's like candy. You can't have too much of it.
Right. Right.
But yeah, it's go ahead.
I'm just going to bring up New Hampshire's recent tweet, which was John McCain's brain tumor saved more lives than Anthony Fauci. So it's a little dark, but it's also, I mean, it is kind of funny. I don't know. And they follow it up with, don't feel bad, the man was a monster, but he did have one unshakable conviction. Wherever America had a foreign policy problem, the solution was always to bomb the crap out of someone. And they didn't use the word crap. I don't know why I censored myself there.
Yeah. Do we look, is this something that you want your non-libertarian neighbor reading? Well,
it's pretty aggressive, I guess. But anyway.
Yeah. Samuel, you have the final piece of your mind, buddy. Why don't you tell us what's on your mind?
All right. Well, we went a long ways from our original topic of like.
Well, good. These things aren't supposed to be related.
Exactly.
About barbecuing, yeah.
But I just remembered like what I was going to talk about somehow tied in, as we were in it. But anyway, there's this guy called, and I'm going to mispronounce his last name, Nav Bhatia. He moved to Toronto in 1984 in the midst of like anti-Sikh riots in India. So basically people were just getting slaughtered and stuff. So he was able to not move to America because they wouldn't let him, but move to Canada. He struggled to find work. He lived in like a $300 a month basement and slept on a child's bed. And, he was a mechanical engineer in India. And so like he had to start out like cleaning toilets and stuff. He always wore a turban for his religion, and he was never able to like he had to apply at like 100 different sales locations in order to be a car salesman. And when he became a car salesman, he achieved Canada's record for 127 car sales in 3 months. And just, totally blew it out of the water. And so like a dealership that was going bankrupt said, hey, come on in, help us out. And like 6 people walked out as soon as he walked in. And I should mention too, like when he was one customer, like they do like rotations where a customer walks in, okay, it's your turn. Another customer walks in, okay, it's your turn. Customer walked in, specifically asked to not be served by the guy with the turban. So he said, that's fine, but just make sure I'm the one who gets to deliver the car. So he delivered the car to the guy, made him a friend, and he sold him all sorts of cars and stuff like that. Anyway, he owned the dealership. The dealership obviously was massively successful, and he has like a net worth of $50 million right now. And he got really into like the Raptors, like a basketball
This
team.
is how I know the guy. Like, I don't know any of that other stuff. But you're about to talk about the thing I actually know about Nav Bhatia. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, then you're pronouncing his name. That's cool.
You did it great. Yeah. Go ahead.
He became a super fan, and he was the first one to get like the ring for being for what it's not the Super Bowl. What do basketball?
He got an NBA championship ring for the 2018-2019 Raptors. They had Kawhi Leonard and all them on the team. Man, that was a crazy team.
Yeah, and was it the Hall of Fame he got into, or
he got into the Basketball Hall of Fame because they started allowing fans in there.
Yeah,
he is a Raptors super fan.
As far as I know, he's the only one, right? Or the only one?
Yeah, well, get this. The team has been around 25 years. He's attended every single home game they've ever had. Not just had tickets to. He has physically attended every single home game the Raptors have ever had. If you are going to allow fans, and I understand maybe you don't want to allow fans, but if you are, he'd probably be the one that you put with the Basketball Hall of Fame.
Right. So I just found this guy immensely like just inspirational because, it's like, he was successful at all these different things. I mean, you know him for Superfan, but it's like, holy cow, this guy just lived life, and he kind of did like the Daryl Davis, if you guys know who he is.
Yeah.
He's the black guy who like converted KKK members by just like talking to him. And I think that's kind of what this guy did. Like, he was just passionate, and he had conviction, and he was able to just win over like everyone because he was just so passionate, and he cared a lot. And it's like, I don't know, he got rid of all those boxes because he was able to just show himself for who he was, and he just loved on people. I guess that's what it is. So I thought he was a pretty cool guy. There was a podcast about him.
Never heard of any of this. Don't know the guy's name because I don't do sports ball. But I'm gonna go read about this guy now.
Yeah, well, you should check out the podcast on Words and Numbers that they feature him, and
Words and Numbers. Hang on, I'm writing this down.
it's presented by Fee.
Okay.
So yeah.
I didn't see Fee had a thing on him. I'll have to check that out too.
He's like fanboying over here.
Anytime somebody talks about sports, there's not enough libertarians who talk about sports. That just flat
It is
out.
weird how it's like sport. They never really mix. I don't know, but yeah. But anyway,
Well,
I found him immensely.
But
that's right.
Yeah.
But I just found it immensely inspirational that a guy could do all of that. And of course, he's an immigrant, so like he's in Canada, and he's just like, everything's amazing. I can just do all this stuff, and he appreciates all the things like we take for granted, and he has that work ethic and that drive. And I don't know, it just inspired me to just we always say like live life to the fullest. We mean like take time off work, or go on vacation, or spend more time with your kids, but we never think like, no, just enjoy whatever, no matter what you're doing. Like, just make a habit of just enjoying your life. And I've kind of tried to apply that to sales too. Like, when I try to sell someone, it's like, I just love you. Like, I'm not trying to just push something on you. I just love you. I love life. And that, I just try to have that attitude and just be passionate.
No.
I mean, do you sell like chocolate or something? Like, so I'm trying to think of something that would convey that love.
Well, I actually sell discounts on your electricity because you can opt into a community solar garden, and you're going to save some money. So I really just walk up to people and save them money. Yeah, but they're all
just
like,
lost your right-wing card right there, man.
Well, no, because
community solar gardens, you sound like a socialist.
Yeah.
Well, because XL has some states like Maine and I think Illinois, like that's all they have is XL Energy. So it's like you're breaking into their monopoly a little bit because there's legislation that allows these community solar gardens and all that stuff. So it's all subsidized. There's no way out of it. So I might as well help people get some savings, just like helping them get some tax relief or something like that.
I do want to say, like, on point with your story, I think it's one of those that people should accept the challenge of saying that, like, I want to defy your expectations of what you have. And I don't want to explain away expectations. I want to show you a new person. One of the biggest things with Daryl Davis wasn't saying, no, there aren't problems in Chicago. No, there isn't violence in the Black community. No, it wasn't denial. What it was is saying, okay, fine, but you have to add me to your equation too. Like, I am part of this as well. So Navbati is Sikh. I have a really good friend who's Sikh. It's a really cool faith. And it's kind of one of those like Buddhism where like people are like, I'm not sure if it actually counts as a religion kind of thing so much as a philosophy, but it's a really cool, like just a lot of great even Christian overlap. I mean, they even have, quotes from Jesus and stuff they'll talk about. So obviously their Jesus friendliness always perks up my ears. And so I listen and being a student of theology, I love studying all religions. And so Navbati is one that, makes my ears peak up because he actually had to leave because of anti-Sikh riots in India. Mm-hmm. And so just to say, like, listen, I know your expectations of somebody with a turban is violence, anger, divisiveness, unwillingness, whatever it may be. I'm wearing a turban. I'm going to show you something different. Like, I just want to be that person who's different. For me as a Christian, I take that so strongly because I know when people think of Christians, I mean, even just common sense, but like if you ask people, what do you think of? Judgmental, angry, closed-minded, bigoted, stuck in the past, Republicans, like, you know, like all these things. And the Republicans, the worst one of all those. No, I'm kidding.
Right.
But like, you know, like all these things. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to try to explain away those Christians. I'm not going to try to say like, no, all Christians are great. You're just, you know, you're just stupid. Like you don't understand Christianity at all. You don't understand Christians at all. It's be like, okay, like I get like your experiences and I'm sorry for them, but I'm a Christian as well. Like, and I want you to understand that. I was actually just talking the other day because we were looking at some older passages in the Interlinear Bible that I use, which goes to like the oldest texts. And we were talking about how the homosexual bigotry has actually been misinterpreted from what it originally was. And everything that happened in Sodom was actually talking about rape and not talking about like, oh, God has a problem with rape. I thought he had a problem with the gay stuff. And it's like the rape, you know, back then people were just like, rape, but gayness, that must be what God was mad about. Whereas, of course, now we as modern theologians look back and we're like, oh, clearly the rape is the problem here.
Right.
It's
like,
not about them being gay. It's
I
about them
totally
being
one of these
rape.
days want to get into like the whole like translation of Malachi and like all of the
Yes.
we're gonna get into the Greek one day.
Right.
We're gonna
Right.
do a
And
whole
so
show
like
on Greek.
but like knowing these things to just be like, okay, so I understand, you know, homophobic Christians. Like I understand, like if you're listening to this and like somebody's like, you know, and I mean, we even have young kids saying this, that it's like, I understand they exist. I just don't have to live with them. I don't agree with their lifestyle. Like, I guess they can go exist on some little gay ranch somewhere, but not in my community, not around my church or something like that. And it's like, man, like, I understand that's your experience with Christians right now, but just factor me in is all I'm asking. And being an intimate, like you said, Navbati wanted to drop, like, let me drop the keys off. Like, let me drop the car off. Let me be that point of interaction. And to just be like, hey, when somebody's down on their down on their luck or something, to be like, hey, like, I'm here for you. Like, I'm going to call you by your proper pronouns. There we go. Let's go full circle with it. You know, like, I'm going to call you how you want to be called. I'm going to value you as a person. I understand your lifestyle. I'm going to show you that love, God is love. That's more important to me than any other commandment he could give, is talk about loving my neighbor. Right. Like, and I'm going to act on these things. And so that to me is what it means to be a Christian fanatic or a Christian radical. These people can call themselves radicals or, you know, Christian, you know, hardcore Christians or whatever, but what they really are is heretics. And they've gone and they're nationalists and they've gone to this dark route. And I'm just like, all right, look, I understand. Like, my goal is not to dismiss what people know about Christians already, but to become a new piece of information that people have about Christians. And I think that it's great that Nav Bhatia took that challenge with the Sikhs. And that's a very simple, it's such a cool story. And it's something that I very much want to do with the Christians, to be like, listen, I understand, like, here's what I think I know about them. But if they even know one person and you're that one person, then when somebody says like, F the Christians, instead of them just laughing and being like, yeah, they'll be like, hey, listen, I know what you're talking about, but I actually have a really good friend who cares about me as a Christian. So like, could you watch it? And then that piece of information infects that community to be like, okay, well, that's not a safe person to just say all Christians suck around anymore. And then be like, oh, here's why they don't suck. Let's go meet them all. And then we get the unity that we're going for here, you know, because it's just new information that people need to know. You need to be the exception to the rule. Again, people's brains, if they have any intellect in them, will form biases. You can't dismiss the bias. All you can do is act as a point of contradiction to those biases and say, I understand, here's what I think I know about Christians, but now I know this person. And now I have to believe something different because I like that person. I care about that person. It's okay to bash gays until you have a gay friend that you really care about. And then you're like, I'm not doing this anymore. Next time somebody says a homophobic slur, I'm not going to be quiet about it anymore. And it's not because I'm gay suddenly. It's because I have somebody to care about who's gay, you know? So like, you know, in Canada, you know, you're not going to get away with an anti-Sikh slur anymore because people are like, no, that guy's really cool. That's all I got.
No, I almost feel like you wrapped it all up so neatly in a little bow. Came full circle. I got nothing else to add.
I could talk about basketball for a few minutes or something.
I don't do the sports ball.
Man, that's a sports slur, by the way. That's an athletic slur. The sports ball thing. That's my word. You can't use that.
I care about you, buddy. So
there we go. I know somebody who cares about sports, so I can't talk smack about them anymore. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Hey, same thing as usual. Every time you click, we make bank. Every time we make bank, the program gets bigger. We go on more platforms. We get more exposure. And that's the way it goes. So just download this on everything you can. Share it. Recommend it to your friends. If you're listening to this on one platform like YouTube or Spotify or Stitcher, go and listen to it on a different one. Leave a positive review on iTunes, whatever it takes. We are still new. We are growing with every podcast, and I'm super happy about that. Samuel and Lou, obviously a pleasure. I love having you both on, and I appreciate you both taking time out of your schedules. I know that this is a big commitment on a weekly basis. You're both busy, and I really do appreciate it. You're such a delight, both of you, to talk with, because I could talk about myself forever, and I like to surround myself with people that I doubt myself. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm smarter than most people, but not Lou and not Samuel. So I'll take them on and then just that helps me limit my talking time, because then I'm like, all right, well, I don't want to take time away from somebody who knows what they're talking about. But
well, it's great being on.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Someone said it's being on a podcast is like being on someone else's boat. It's wow, what do you say? It's like it's great until you have to have your own, like something like that. Yeah, so this is a blast every time.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you. I'm glad you're having a blast. Listeners, again, love you. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll talk to you again.